Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Halfback Dynasty. My name is Brendan. We are joined today with our legendary co-host, Tyler, a.k.a. Gatorsons. Tyler, how the heck you feeling, my man?
Feeling pretty good right now, Brendan. Nice Sunday night here, just hanging out with my wife and the dogs, watching a little TV, getting ready for the Avs game. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'll hoist the cup tonight, or maybe it's coming back to Colorado. Doing great, man. How you doing?
Yeah, as you mentioned, it feels good to start recording episodes on Sundays, get some articles out on Patreon, finalizing our rankings. I really enjoy that things are coming together. Sundays are obviously a recovery day and a relaxation day, but it's also a day jam-packed of getting Dynasty football content out there. I know you're able to do some content throughout the week. That's got to be pretty nice, eh?
It's nice. That's hopefully my employers aren't watching, but that's the good thing about a desk job. You can, especially when you're in your own office and, you know, they can't see your screens. So yeah, it looks like I'm hard at work, but really I'm just crunching Dynasty content in there.
Yeah. I love it.
We've got some really good articles. You just came out with one, what's better, drafting a running back or wide receivers. It's a great read. Obviously, as you mentioned, all of our rankings are out for one QB and then Superflex / QB, 2 QB, excuse me. We've got some nice gems for hidden running back gems for rookies. And we got a bunch of great stuff on our Patreon. So hopefully everybody's getting signed up, and, you know, give us a shout out if you have any material you'd like us to cover or break down. We're here for you. So we'd love to answer any questions we can, or maybe break it down fully in an article. So
I'm waiting for someone to ask us to cover Jerry Judy and why he's the Dynasty wide receiver 1. So I'm waiting. I
mean, it's Russell Wilson. I mean, I expect Judy to be a top, I'm going to say 3 this year.
Nice, bro. Hey, he only moved down 2 spots from last year. That's pretty good. That's good. So
that's what we talk about. These rookies have that baked in value. It really doesn't matter what they do their first year, you know, their second year, you want them to hit, but rookies have value just baked in.
Absolutely. I love it, brother. Well, last episode we covered our top 5 Dynasty running backs. So we've got to do the wide receivers justice tonight. And let's go ahead and talk about our top 5 Dynasty wide receivers. Last episode, our rankings were pretty similar. I had some major reaches, I'm not going to lie, but you know, rather be 1 year early than 1 year late in acquiring these guys at a smaller value. Moving forward, that being said, I have a feeling our wide receiver rankings will be a little more similar, just because some of the top guys are the clear-cut top guys, if that makes sense. There's a new cycle of wide receivers that are incredibly young, incredibly valuable right now. So I know you posted your rankings. I don't remember who your top 5 are, but let's just take turns going in order and let's see how close we are, if that makes sense. How do you feel about that?
That sounds great to me.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, I give you the honors all the time, my man. You're well deserving of it. Let's hear who you got at wide receiver 1 overall in Dynasty football.
Perfect. My top 100 rankings in a 1 QB, actually my first 2 guys are wide receivers. So I've got Taylor number 3 overall, which is kind of rare.
Interesting.
Justin Jefferson for me is the best overall asset in a 1 QB format for Dynasty. So he's my number 1 wideout and my number 1 overall, actually. His consistency is just, it's there. He doesn't necessarily have the blow up factor, but his floor is so safe that I think he's the best overall wide receiver in the game, to be honest. So I know a lot of people have Jamar Chase up there at number 1, but I think he was, I mean, obviously he's a rookie when he hit, so that's big, but I think he was heavily carried by that 50-plus point game. Without that, his stats wouldn't have been as appealing in fantasy, whereas Jefferson's now done it for 2 years. He looks like, I mean, it'd be like getting Jerry Rice his second year. You know, as a rookie, his first year, I mean, he just looks like the out and out number 1 to me. And To me, it's not as close as for others. Jefferson's my number one overall.
Okay. Piggybacking off that, do you have Jamar Chase at 2?
I do. Yeah, I do have Chase at 2.
Okay. So I have Jamar Chase at 1, and I've got Justin Jefferson at 2. And, it's really tough to have players that have absolutely no worries and no question marks. I mean, these guys are as good as it gets. My only 2 concerns, one each per player, is one, as you mentioned, Jamar Chase was very reliant on that big game. He was kind of invisible for a few weeks, which we saw. Granted, still a phenomenal rookie campaign. You cannot say otherwise. He is tied to one of the best up-and-coming quarterbacks. The offense is incredibly potent. You've got another great wide receiver in T. Higgins out there. You've got Joe Mixon back in the backfield. I mean, that offense is going to be very good. Now, the reason why I have him over Justin Jefferson is because of his QB situation. Kirk Cousins is actually incredibly accurate and very solid in the NFL. And people he's not a big name. He's not flashy. People kind of sleep on him a little bit. I think he and Justin Jefferson work very well together, which they have the past 2 years. But we don't know his future. It seems kind of muddy after this year. And he's also reaching that age. I think he's got to be mid-30s by now, getting close to it. What's going to happen if Kirk Cousins isn't there? Justin Jefferson is most likely QB proof. I mean, as you mentioned, his floor is so good. He could do anything on the field. He could stretch the field. He could catch shorter passes. I mean, the guy's a stud. But what will happen if they draft a rookie quarterback, my man? What do you think? You think he's going to have 108 receptions again, like he had this past season, 1,600 receiving yards? That's my biggest worry. Is that a fair worry?
Absolutely. I think it's a fair worry. And kind of going back to that, I mean, I'm more excited about Jefferson this year than even the past 2 because of their scheme change. They're actively saying they are not going to run the ball nearly as much as they are. Obviously, Dalvin Cook has struggled to stay healthy. So I'm really excited to see what he does. And my hope as a big Jefferson fan is that Minnesota gets their quarterback next year with having arguably, man, right now you could maybe say there's 6 quarterbacks that could go in the first round of next year's draft. So my hope is they address that sooner rather than later, because like you said, Cousins is good, but he's not great. Jefferson's one of those guys. What if he had a better quarterback? What happens with him? Whereas you don't have that worry with Chase. That was kind of the biggest factor for me, that it was tough deciding between the 2, because Chase does have Burrow, who not only is great, is incredibly young. Those 2 should be together for years and years and years, pending health. So, in a better offense overall in Cincinnati, I mean, they're kind of similar. I mean, Thielen is a very good, underrated wide receiver. T. Higgins obviously is more highly rated because he's young, but Thielen has been a WR1 for what, 5 years now?
He's solid, man. He's solid.
I mean, Dalvin Cook overall is better than Joe Mixon has been. Joe Mixon had a great year last year, but you just kind of break these teams down. They're extremely similar. So, but I do like Chase being with Burrow more than Jefferson with Cousins. But if Cousins re-signs long-term, I think that whole issue goes away.
So it's a concern, but it's not a big enough concern to really affect them being at the top. Just to give the stat line, Jamar Chase had 81 receptions for over 1,400 yards and 13 tutties, man. 13 teeters as a rookie is so sick.
That's
and
big.
Of course, 1,400, obviously. Justin Jefferson had a wild second season, 108 receptions, over 1,600 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So they both should really stay up in the top 5 for sure in terms of finishing, and probably there's a great chance they stay as the top 2 wide receivers for next year. When we take a look at the 2023 rankings, so definitely interchangeable. Age isn't really a matter here since they're only 1 year apart. Both guys I'd love to own. I play in leagues where a guy actually owns both of them, and it's like, Jesus, man.
That's huge. Yeah, that's a great place to be. I've seen a few trades go down on forums where guys are actively trying to have the pair and, giving up a lot of the future to have them both now. And the one thing that sticks out to me, Brendan, when you mentioned their stats was, I'm not going to take away what Chase did, but his efficiency, 81 balls, getting to that many yards. I think obviously a player his caliber maybe doesn't need the volume, but
Mhm.
I don't know, with having Higgins and that few receptions, if you will. I know that's not few, but for
Mhm.
a big time wide receiver, that's not very many
Got to get to
catches that,
95 plus, in my opinion.
yeah,
Get close
like
to 100.
what does that do? What does that look like next year if he doesn't, like we said about his one monster game? I mean, he took that one, 90 yards to the house or whatever it was. You're not always going to get that. So that to me is the difference between Jefferson and Chase. Is Jefferson can explode, but he also has the volume and the consistency game in and game out that, like I said, brings him to my number one. And
Mhm.
Chase might get there, Chase is it's only his first year, so he might get there. But again, Jefferson's done this for 2 years now.
Yeah, 18 yards per reception is definitely
It's a
incredibly
lot.
high.
That's a
So
lot.
yeah, it's going to go down. There's no doubt about it. There's another guy on this list that I'll compare the yards per reception in terms of this other player that I have in my top 5 having way more receptions, way more yards, but that yards per reception is a lot lower. So let's move into number 3. Who do you have coming in at number 3?
Number 3 is kind of a tricky spot overall in Dynasty. It was not for me. It might not be as justified as the first two, but CeeDee
Uh-oh.
Lamb. CeeDee
Okay,
Lamb
okay.
is
I
my
was
number
expecting a
3.
hot take, brother. The way you kind of threw that out there. That's good though. That's
You thought I
I
was
like
going with
that.
Judy?
Yeah, I did actually.
No, I've got CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, I think you could say to an extent his first 2 years have been a disappointment in reality, but
Mhm.
he's shown a high level. He's incredibly valuable, which on the market, which, obviously drives him up a little bit. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do without Cooper. I mean,
Mhm.
Amari Cooper had a very subpar season it's amazing how people talk about Cooper. When you go back and really look at it, Cooper really didn't have a good season at all.
Mhm.
So, but he's very volume heavy. He gets peppered with targets every week. He's kind of like a Keenan Allen. I don't think he's as good, but he's getting 12, 13, 14 targets a week. Now that those are gone, you start peppering CeeDee Lamb like that with his athleticism and his
Mhm.
ability to, break anything open. I expect CeeDee Lamb to have a breakout season, if you will. I mean, I think he's already somewhat broken out, but I expect him to be up around 1,300 plus yards. I really do.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, it's very, very fair in my opinion. I have him at number 3 as well. His stat line from last season was 79 receptions, just broke 1,100 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. I don't know how many targets are considered open now with Amari Cooper gone, but it's got to be like 120 plus. I mean, my goodness. Yeah, he definitely has an opportunity here. Another year with Dak. The offense is very pass heavy, if you will. I mean, I know they have Zeke and Pollard, but Dak can sling the ball. And it's really funny that a stat line of 80 receptions and 1,100 yards is kind of disappointing for a guy like CeeDee
Yeah.
Lamb. But if we're being honest, that's a pretty good stat line for an NFL receiver. But obviously, we're banking on him becoming an elite guy. And a wide receiver breakout year in year 3 is pretty typical, if we're being honest. 3 years for a wide receiver to break out sounds pretty on par. I think he has a great chance to do it. If he doesn't eclipse 1,300 is pretty fair. I was thinking more like, 95 receptions, 1,400 yards,
Yeah.
maybe close to 10 touchdowns. If he doesn't do that, I think he's going to move down in rankings. He is one of the candidates that I have up there that I think will have a higher chance to move down over guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I think there's a tier break, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Is that fair? Is that fair that there's a tier break between those guys and Lamb?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And I see a lot of, trade questions specifically involving Lamb. And there's
Mhm.
certain managers that are constantly trying to get out of any asset, whether it's Chase, Jefferson, Kyle Pitts, any of these guys that, their ranking really and their value has nowhere to go but down. And I agree. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb, I don't think has anywhere to go but flatline or go down.
Mhm.
I'm the type of manager that I don't look to cash out. I'm okay having good young assets. I don't always need to
You don't
reset.
trade those guys, bro.
Yeah,
I
you
know
don't. I don't need to reset the clock every year, but not everybody's like that. So yeah, if you're trying to get max value for CeeDee Lamb, it probably is this year because I don't see him getting up with Jefferson or Chase, but It was interesting you mentioned Pollard and Zeke. That was the other thing. Zeke looked really washed towards the end of last year, and I don't think that's going to change. So I think even Zeke slowing down opens up even more for Lamb. I wouldn't be surprised if, they used Lamb a little bit on reverse and rushing slightly last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they get him a little bit more involved on some kind of trick plays or, things like that. So yeah, I think Lamb has all the writing to make a huge jump. But yeah, if you're looking to cash out, this is probably the time to do it.
Yeah, it could. I see two things happening. I mean, obviously, if we're ranking him at Dynasty wide receiver 3, it's probably going to be pretty expensive. But there's two things that can happen here. One, he doesn't perform as well as expectations suggest he will, or our expectations. So his value will decrease. Or two, he'll jump up into that number 1 tier, and his value is going to basically gain like an extra first. I'll be honest, he's probably worth like 2 first-round picks and maybe, a prospect. To me, that sounds pretty fair, while Chase and Jefferson scream 3 first-round picks. So CeeDee Lamb clearly can only get up to that 3 first-round pick value or go down to less than 2 first-round picks. So I think he's going to fluctuate no matter what. I don't see him staying stagnant at 3. He's either going to go up or down, in my opinion. I know that's crazy because there's only 2 guys ahead of him, but let's see if he does it. I think he's way more athletic than Amari Cooper is. I think Amari Cooper is a better route runner, but let's remember that Amari Cooper had a lot of boom or bust games. And on those bust games, CeeDee Lamb didn't really jump out to me that much of having boom games while he had Amari Cooper had bust games. I don't know. I'm very curious. As you mentioned, it was very tough to pick a number 3 dynasty wide receiver. He's up there. He's got the talent. He's got the age. He's got the quarterback. But let's see what happens, man. Let's go to number 4. Number 4 is the oldest player on this list for me. Who do you have as your wide receiver 4?
Well, based on that, I think you and I are heading the same direction here. I have Cooper Kupp
at
number 4. He's too good not to have him. It feels weird to have a player that is aging up that high, but Kupp has been so good and so undervalued since he came into the league. Nobody ever paid attention to him, and he was, in a top 10 WR for multiple years, production wise. It's just he's not as flashy. He's just not as exciting, but he's just an amazing wide receiver. I mean, what he did last year, obviously I don't expect that to repeat. I'm not sure anybody would repeat that, but he deserves to be up this high. He's a PPR beast. I mean, if you're in a PPR league, what more could you want? You could argue he's number 1 in a PPR. He was the number 1 receiver by a mile last year. So he's tied to Stafford. I don't see any reason that he's going to drop a ton. I think 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns plus is very realistic. And, we say it before on this show, everybody is obsessed with youth, obsessed with the age in Dynasty. But at the end of the day, if you win titles, it doesn't matter how old your team is. At the end of the day, production is the only thing that matters in fantasy football.
It's those points, baby. I don't care how they get them. If they get them, they get them. Helps me win. So, yeah, his stat line was absolutely wicked last year. 145 receptions, over 1,900 receiving yards, 16 teeters, bro. That's insane.
Huge.
That's a big stat line. And as I mentioned earlier, we were discussing Jamar Chase's yards per reception. Jamar Chase averaged 18 yards per reception, which is it's nuts, man. And we look at Cooper Kupp, a guy who had way more receptions, like 60 more, had 500 more receiving yards. He was averaging 13.4 yards per reception. That seems like it's where it's supposed to be, and it still seems pretty high for a guy who has that much volume thrown his way. So it's amazing you said, he'll still have a great year at 1,500 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. That's a decrease of 450 yards in the air as well as 6 touchdowns, and he would still rank, as like a top 5 wide receiver finisher. That's just the perspective that we're trying to put this in. His season was so good I don't even know how many points he had more than the second ranked guy. I know JT had a wicked season, but Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp had to have been neck and neck in terms of total points, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, his season was huge. I mean, he outscored many quarterbacks, even in Superflex. And Kupp's season was crazy.
Yep.
And that shows kind of how maybe spoiled we are anymore with wide receivers. Kind of like you said with CeeDee Lamb having 1,100 yards. Like 10 years ago, 1,000-yard season for a wide receiver was you're ecstatic about that. Now it's like if you have a guy that's even decent or has the upside, you expect 1,000 yards. But 1,900 that's insane. He had one of the best seasons ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, it has to be ever. I mean, granted, I know there was an extra game, so I'm sure they'll put an asterisk on all these guys' record breaking. I think that's the most receptions in a year, is it not? 145.
Yeah, that's a huge number.
I know Michael Thomas was close a few years ago, but I think Cooper Kupp did break it. I'm pretty sure he did.
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah,
me on that. So
I think he did.
Yeah, that's wild, man. And I won a league because I had Kupp, Stafford. It was a beautiful stack, and then and those three players literally. I mean, that's all I really needed to play, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, so, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it showed that Stafford. All of us that argued how good he was just on a terrible team. Stafford's
horrible team.
Always been a really good quarterback.
Yeah, for real. Cool. All right. For those wondering, Cooper Kupp is 29 years old right now. He is about 5-6 years older than any other player on my personal top 7 list. So he's been around for a lot longer, but until he shows signs of slowing down, you got to keep him up there. Perfect. All right. Final spot, Tyler, number 5. Who do you got coming in?
This one was really, really difficult for me because I had, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, all right in this tier. I know he's not a popular person this offseason, but A.J. Brown still checks in as my WR5. I don't know what Brown has done to have gone last year from arguably the WR1 or 2 to now nobody wants him, nobody likes him. I mean, he was hurt for a good majority of the year. Yeah, injuries are a problem. It does look like his knees are possibly an issue and could be his whole career, which is unfortunate because he's a phenomenal player. But, even going to Philadelphia, who does not have a great passing quarterback, they're not going to throw for 0 yards a game. They still have to throw the ball. They're still going to be, in today's NFL, 300 yards passing by Hurts a majority of weeks. Like, I don't understand the disdain for A.J. Brown that's seemingly come up after a trade and one off season. If I didn't know the manager who had him in our big league quite as well, I would love to try and buy low. But as you well know, in our league, that's not a thing.
Never buy low.
No, but A.J. Brown to me is still a phenomenal young receiver. And again, I had Higgins, Waddle, and Godwin really kind of neck and neck there. So I could see an argument for any of them or anybody else even. But A.J. Brown, I still think is a very solid, safe wide receiver.
So I have A.J. Brown as my wide receiver 6. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, his name kind of just screams elite and high value. Yeah. But his injuries are pretty scary. He arguably went to a more run-heavy team than he was on prior. I know Derrick Henry is a beast, but with how often Jalen Hurts runs the ball, it's a little alarming. I mean, he's capable. It's not like he's just a deep threat guy. He can play all across the field and catch the ball anywhere. So this is another guy who I think has a chance to move up the list, but also could move down the list based on this year. There's a few question marks, but this is make it or break it season. You mentioned T. Higgins. That's who I actually have as my wide receiver 5. He's just tied to such a good offense, super young. I mean, but Burrow could probably throw 400 yards a game multiple times this upcoming season. I would honestly make a bet that he eclipsed 400 passing yards 7 times. Seriously.
Could happen.
Seriously. I mean, the kid is so good at throwing the ball downfield and getting it to his receivers that T. Higgins was the choice here for me. I thought about Chris Godwin, but he's been injured. It's tough to put a guy who's coming off an ACL tear. So I understand your love for Godwin. He's definitely one of your favorite players, probably of all time, but I couldn't sneak him up in there. Jalen Waddle, I could see. I've got him as my 7th ranked wide receiver. My only concern with Waddle is I really don't know how Tyreek Hill is going to affect him. You have people that are so confident in one way or the other that Tyreek Hill will really help Jalen Waddle out, or that he really won't. And I don't know, man. I really can't tell you what they're going to do, because they're both similar players, man. They're both similar players, and 104 receptions is a lot, man. With Tyreek Hill there too, who's used to getting that type of volume.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I really don't know. So I think we had basically the same top 6 or 7. You just had Chris Godwin up there a little bit higher than I did, but it goes to show you that a lot of these wide receivers deserve to have a spot up in these rankings. They've clearly proved something, or they have a lot of upside. So I'm pretty content with your rankings, Tyler, as I hope you are with mine. They're very justifiable, I guess, is a good word here.
Yeah, I like the rankings, and I think, kind of everything we talked about. Now is a great time within your league to at least ask the Brown owner what they're looking for. Ask Jalen Waddle manager what they're looking for. If people are just in a panic that Brown went to a not great throwing team, I must have missed something, because Ryan Tannehill is not that great either, but
he's not.
I get he's better passing than Hurts. If somebody's panicking that Hill's there, maybe you can get Waddle for a decent price. And I really liked your wide receiver 5 and Higgins, that you're never going to get Jamar Chase unless you mortgage your entire future. Go get T. Higgins. He's going to produce, probably not as well, but similar. Get Higgins for a way more affordable price than Jamar Chase, and I think that same can be said for Jefferson. There's 3 guys in fantasy you don't try to trade for. It's Jefferson, Chase, Taylor. We'll put in 4 because Kyle Pitts is the best player to ever play. There's 4 guys you don't trade for in fantasy, and it's those 4. Make a smart trade and go get Higgins instead of Chase. It's the
Find
same
somebody
player.
half the price. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's arguably the same player. And teams, if they double team Chase way more this year than last, Higgins could outscore Chase. He easily could.
Yeah, very potent set of wide receivers to say the least, though.
For
Tyler,
sure.
this has been fantastic for everyone listening. As we mentioned, our rankings are up on our Patreon. Go over, check it out, subscribe if you like the content. But you got anything else you want to say to the fans listening here, my friend?
Not really. This is kind of the boring time of Dynasty. Not a lot going on. We're through the draft, through free agency. Now's the best time to kind of price check people. Like we said, I think you have a better chance of getting a good deal, or, a low ball offer deal to go through in the off season, because people are bored.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, I know. In our new league, Brendan, I sent like 5 messages yesterday, because it was just like, I just kind of want to make a trade in this league.
Yeah, you just want to see some action. You see it in some of our league chats.
I was trying to get the full Alabama team like I have in the other one. And yeah, people aren't selling Williams. They're not moving Judy. They're not moving Waddle, but it's just like, man, we got to get something going. We got a long time till.
Yeah, people just want to see some action.
Lineup. Yeah,
hey, exactly. I want to see some big blockbusters, even if I'm not involved. Honestly, even if someone gets fleeced, I'm all against fleecing, but I get it happens. It's still entertaining to see. We just want some action. Go send some offers out. Even if they're terrible offers, who cares? Exactly. Cool, brother. Cool. Well, as always, it's been a great episode. Thanks to everyone watching. Just remember, you're in this for life, folks. Peace.